I'm Peter Garrett, and I studied at Exeter College, Oxford University, where I read PPE and I held an open scholarship. Over the last 8 years, I've helped more than 100 students to obtain an offer to study at either Oxford or Cambridge University. I hope you enjoy the following video, and if you want to find out more about how Oxbridge Edge can help you optimize your journey towards an offer, then please check out the link in the description. So, Amelia, you've applied this year to Oxford, and you're applying for English literature.
Yes.
And I'm going to invite you to read me a little bit of your personal statement. I have read it before, but I think I read an earlier draft. So it'll be very interesting for me to hear the latest edition. So do you want to take it away?
Literature explores the complexities of the human condition beyond historical, geographical, and scientific limitations. Compositions serve as a mirror to society, reflecting the interplays of humanity and observing documenting the hunger and banality of human life is without the intrinsic appeal to morbid curiosity.
Okay, so if I asked you to choose one book to talk about, let's imagine you've been invited into local secondary school, talk to year 11 and try and invite them to study A-level English literature. Which book would you take into that setting?
Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
Okay, now why would you choose that particular book?
Because it serves as such a good contextual novel, as well as discussing morality, religion, and still serves as a mirror of a current society. For example, transhumanism ideals are really relevant and really profound in Frankenstein, but for a book so advanced, then it can still be used.
So there's this old debate in interpretation of a text, and it's called hermeneutics, if you like, and it was between Hans-Georg Gadamer, who was a German academic, and another guy called Eli Hirsch, who was an American professor. And Gadamer said you should never look at the life or the background of a writer in order to understand the text. And Eli Hirsch said you can't understand a book if you don't know the biography of the writer and the history of the culture from which the writing emerged. Now, with regard to Mary Shelley, would you say that Georg Gadamer's right, let's just dive into the text and ignore who Mary was? Or would you say Eli Hirsch is right?
They both are right, but for different reasons, I think.
Okay.
To read the novel and enjoy the novel itself, you don't need context. But to understand it, I believe you would need context. You would need to understand Mary Shelley.
And which two aspects, let's say two snippets of information from the life of Mary Shelley, which two aspects do you think shed the most illumination on the book?
Definitely the domestic spheres. So with like her husband and her parents, I feel like they were the biggest traumatic influences on her.
You don't think there's an element of erasure here, that there was a competition to write a horror story? And do you know what I'm referring?
I do know what you're referring to.
Okay, give me a bit of information about that competition.
Between her husband and his friends, they all made a competition to write the scariest or make a famous novel. And she participated, but she had to go under a fake name. That was a male name, so it would get publicised.
Now, there is a book on that weekend. They all went to Lake Geneva, I think, and the book's called Gothic. So if you don't need to make a note of it now, you can ask me on the platform. But if you wanted a good historical read, there was a Dr. Polidori there, I think, for the weekend, and he told a horror story, and then maybe Byron was there. But what I was hinting at was maybe the erasure is Percy Bysshe Shelley. Maybe he really wrote Frankenstein and didn't get the historical credit because he drowned. Maybe he didn't get the historical credit for writing Frankenstein, and Mary's taken all the plaudits. I mean, is that possible?
Well, in the time that it was written, he also wrote his own story. So, but the similarity between what's depicted in Frankenstein and with Shelley's life is way too closely linked for it to be Percy Shelley.
Okay, so her mum famously, Mary Wollstonecraft, she was one of the first campaigners for women's rights, but Mary Shelley felt a bit guilty about the death of Mary Wollstonecraft. Well, why did Mary Shelley feel guilty about the death of?
Because she died in childbirth.
Yeah, I mean, she died 5 days later of a
As a result.
condition called puerperal sepsis. And then Mary Shelley's dad, Godwin, who some people think of as an anarchist, he wrote a book about his wife after she died. And there were a couple of things in that book that caught Mary Shelley's attention. Are you aware of Godwin's book?
No, no.
So Godwin wrote about, he praised his wife for being into free love or polyamory. Not a great thing to do in the early 19th century. He also pointed out how bereaved he was. He said, "I am left the sorrowful widower." And Mary, when she read it, Mary Shelley, when she read it, she felt, oh no, my birth killed my mum, and that death left my father bereaved and lonely. And do you pick up anything in the text of the actual novel where you find echoes of those deep, tragic emotions?
Probably as a reflection of the creature. Because he's soul searching for a family, soul searching for a parental figure, and Victor rejects the creature. He doesn't want to be that parental figure because he's so disgusted by what he looks at. And I see that could mimic her relationship with her father, because when he looks at Mary Shelley, that he will only ever see the death of his wife.
Interesting. Okay. Do you want to read us a little bit more of your PS? Maybe jump down to a later paragraph.
I could jump down to when I talk about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Let's do that.
My enthusiasm for English literature has been profoundly formulated by my engagement with texts that probe the darker aspects of humanity, such as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Poe's tales of predicaments and poems, alongside Lovecraft's short stories Beyond the Wall of Sleep, The Alchemist, and The Beast in the Cave. Frankenstein has revived my analytical ability as well as explored my interest in moral, philosophical questioning. Constructing bridges between other subjects is an implicit imperative for analysis. For example, the ideals of transhumanism and Gothic symbolisms are present in Shelley's novel, as well as recurrent fluctuation of Poe's belief as a reflection and rejection of current affairs.
So let's just pause there. I mean, one part of me wants to accuse you of a penchant for the macabre. Do you plead guilty to having a penchant or a passion for the macabre?
I feel like it's easily more interesting.
Okay.
For me, I feel like it's more interesting.
You're drawn towards the dark side.
I think it's more enjoyable to read.
I mean, this idea of shadow integration, we get this in Dorian Gray. I don't know if you've come across any.
Yeah.
You've come across Dorian Gray. Mm-hmm. What's going on in Dorian Gray?
It's basically he sees himself in this image or portrait, and whilst he forever remains youthful, it's his, I don't know if it's a portrait, but portrait I think it is, a portrait that ages, but it's a reflection of his aspiration for eternal beauty, eternal youth.
In a way, the portrait is a Horcrux, if you know that word from Harry Potter.
From Harry Potter.
Yeah, and so his soul is in the painting in the attic, and the painting isn't aging. Or he's not aging, but the painting is. Actually, there's a modern film just came out of the cinema this week. It's called The Substance. And in the film, there's a woman, she's a teacher of aerobics, and I think she's reached 50. And the network have decided to let her go. And then she comes across an advertisement for this substance you can take once, and it rejuvenates your genetics. And what happens is she injects herself, and then a 19 or 20-year-old version of herself emerges. Mm-hmm. And then they're allowed 1 week each. You have to switch backwards and forwards between your younger self and your older self. And they start breaking the rules and things go wrong. But there's this fascination, down the generations, down the centuries. We've all been fascinated with the tricks of time. Mm-hmm. And we've all been seduced by the notion of stopping aging. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned transhumanism in your PS. Is that one of the objectives of transhumanism, to stop aging? Are you applying to Oxford or Cambridge this year? We've built a free platform, and on there you can access 10 modules covering everything from subject choices to personal statement preparation, and even delving into the world of optimal interview preparation. So join a community of like-minded individuals with similar goals to yourself. Sign up at the link in the description and start acing the admissions process today.
In a way, the bigger ideal would be to maintain life, sustaining life at an enhanced capacity.
So can you give any examples? I mean, what kind of enhancements are we looking at?
So one example is like an optic eye, I think was one, in that we discussed, where they give themselves such an elite, broader vision, so you can, instead of visible light, it goes beyond those wavelengths. It goes to ultraviolet or possibly infrared.
Yeah. Might be called an oculus, like a camera in your eye.
For memory.
Well, it would have 100% recall facility for all images. So is that something you yourself would do? Would you get one of your eyes taken out, replaced by a camera?
Personally, I wouldn't, but
you put you as a character. Well, Edgar Allan Poe, I mean, he would love that, wouldn't he? I mean, and the idea of like plucking out one of your own eyes, I mean, that would be great in an Edgar Allan Poe story.
It'd be interesting to read about. But
okay. Oh, so you're more of a vicarious experiencer of
observe, but not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you not feel you'd go deeper into reality if instead of observing? I mean, it was one of the American presidents, he said, at the end of the day, the plaudits go not to the spectators, but to those bloodied in the arena. Do you not feel being bloodied in the arena is the way to go?
Not if it's having my eye pulled out and putting an oculus in.
Okay, let's talk about the soul. I mean, I think before you were talking about Dorian Gray, and we were wondering where the soul was. Mm-hmm. With transhumanism and with AI, do you think that they will have souls, these AIs?
No.
Okay, and you're very clear on that. Yeah. How do you get to that quick answer?
Because with technology and AI, it's founded and based on human interaction. It's human coding, so it's commanded to behave the way it behaves. It's not its own thing. It's not. Now, the definition of a soul, well, obviously that's quite broad, that's quite controversial, but I don't believe in the soul as something that's life. I mean, people have tried to define the soul, and they've tried to define the person. Wittgenstein said, I don't know what the soul is, but the best sketch we have of it is the human body. And then Boethius in the Tractate, sixth Tractate, he said it's an individual substance with a rational nature. Now, maybe AI won't have an individual nature. Yeah. It might be rational, but it won't be individual because it'll be plugged into the cloud. Yeah, or it'll be connected to everything else. So maybe your supposition is right that they won't have souls. But now people are saying maybe we live in a simulation. I mean, if we live in a simulation, then maybe you're just a programmable entity. Would you just deny that as a suggestion? I don't think I'm living in a simulation. Okay, so let's look at other books that you've dived into. Never Let Me Go was a book. Now, I can see that you love Never Let Me Go. You don't like Kathy, though, do you? No. Okay, so tell me how you can simultaneously not like the main protagonist, but like the book. Because I believe that, again, the context with it makes it more powerful. It's a critique on the morality and defining humanity. So it relates to current scientific advancements and like questioning how far will you take this for the good of the people, whilst creating and cultivating these clones just to kill them off, just in order to rejuvenate. So in ethical terms, how would you object to that? That's the proposal, that we make clones, we use them for spare parts, and we kill the clones. How would you formulate an ethical objection to that suggestion? Well, how do you determine that they're not of equal value to what you consider humans? Why are they different?
I mean, I was going to ask you the same question about AIs, because you seem quite keen to dismiss the notion of AIs having souls, but you think clones have souls?
Well, in this book specifically, they're created the exact same way that humans are created in our society. Like,
are they?
It's test tube babies.
Okay,
That's how they're created in the book.
I mean, if you want to make a defined distinction, though, test tube baby technology is different from natural conception.
Yeah.
And cloning technology is different from IVF,
Yeah.
or test tube baby technology. And theologians have wondered, in 1970s, people like Oliver O'Donovan at Oxford were asking this question: begotten or made? Will test tube babies be the same as naturally conceived babies? And then in the 1990s, 96, 97, around the time that Wilmot made Dolly the sheep, people were saying, once we clone babies, will they have souls? Because the development of the baby, it's no longer the fusion of a sperm from the father and an egg from the mother. It might be an electric shock that stimulates one cell to start to divide. I mean, what they normally do is they find an egg cell, and then they take out the haploid nucleus and they drop in a diploid somatic nucleus from an adult body cell.
Okay.
And then they stimulate cell division to try to get a cloned copy manufactured. Is it clear to you that none of that biological change might prevent a soul emerging? You just seem very. You answer questions very quickly about souls and persons. Theologians have been struggling for centuries or millennia, but Amelia always knows immediately what the answer is.
I believe that a soul isn't a tangible thing. It's not defined by the biology that you have as the human body. I would relate it more to religion and religious connotations of a soul. That means that you've got a part of God in you, but because I'm not religious, I don't actually believe that humans do have the capacity for a soul.
I think somebody did once try to weigh a body just before it died, and then weigh the body after death, and they were trying to find out if there was 8 grams missing, trying to find the soul that left the body. Deus ex machina, something like that. Let's listen to the last paragraph of your PS.
Okay. I'm eager to engage with a curriculum that encourages rigorous analysis and critical thinking, allowing me to explore a range of texts and perspectives within a stimulating academic environment, as well as engaging in discussions alongside peers and scholars who share my enthusiasm.
Great. So if I gave you a choice between 2 modules, we've got one module on Marxian literary analysis, and then we've got another module on psychoanalytic literary analysis. So for one module, you'd be reading people like Hegel and Marx, and you'd be looking at how the forces of economy shape an individual. And then in the other, you'd be reading Freud and Jung, and you'd be looking at psychoanalytic categories. Which of those 2 would you choose?
I think the psychoanalytic category.
And how might a psychoanalytic analysis help you to go even deeper with Mary Shelley or Ishiguro?
Well, understanding more about the human brain and human behaviour would make understanding how that book is a representation of an author so much more easier, because you'd be able to make those distinctions and make that relationship.
Great. So Freud had this sort of set of categories, the ego and the superego and the id. I can't remember if you do psychology for A level.
My sister does.
Your sister does psychology. People have tried to reinterpret lots of literary text using his categories.
We do that for Never Let Me Go, actually.
How did you do that for Never Let Me Go?
We used Freud's theory of displacement, about feeling out of touch with your surroundings and being so desensitized that things become normalized. So especially with Kathy and all of the main clones, it's so evident to see that when they hear about completion, they're not fazed by it, because it's a euphemism for death, and they don't see the word or hear the word death. They hear the word completion as it's their job. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and is that euphonious to you? Does the word completion sound sweet?
Yeah.
Are you buying into the?
understand why they're using it to make it a lighter tone. Completion sounds better than death,
Yeah.
obviously.
Like passing on. Or...
Like, you've done your job, you're done with your job, rather than you're dead.
Okay. I mean, Marx might have fun, the body has become a product. Maybe in the capitalist YouTube culture of today, you could make yourself a product. I mean, arguably, Kim Kardashian's made herself a product. Isn't that her choice?
It is a choice.
And the clones, of course, in Never Let Me Go don't have a choice.
Yeah.
What did you read in the summer?
I read a lot of The Predicaments by Edgar Allan Poe, and I read a few early stories by Lovecraft, and...
Did you read Herman Hesse?
No.
Narcissus and Goldmund?
No.
Okay.
I also read a preface to Shakespeare by Samuel Johnson, which I thought was very helpful to me doing Othello in English literature.
Okay. I mean, let's just briefly talk about Othello.
Okay.
Who's the victim in Othello?
Desdemona.
Isn't Othello kind of a victim? I mean, his military career's wrecked and he's subject to some forms of racism.
I feel like racism was what led him to his own self-destruction. But it was also his own inability to distinguish military life from the domestic sphere.
Yeah, so eventually he turns the bedroom into a battlefield.
Yeah.
And there's this famous line in one of the critics. It says, the only consummation in Othello was the murder of Desdemona.
Yeah, because it was in the marital bed. But as well as... I feel like it's his own insecurity.
Is it his hamartia?
Yeah. His insecurity and his jealousy are his biggest hamartias.
So the fatal flaw destroys his wife and himself.
Yeah.
Something about Desdemona annoys me. I just think, couldn't she have taken action earlier in the play?
I feel like the whole point of her was to embody complete purity, complete innocence. So even at the time of her death, she forgives Othello. So that's just to say and represent how undeniably epitome of virtuous that she is.
Do you think Othello had a soul?
In the religious term, I feel like it was a very corrupted soul.
Did he lose his soul?
I wouldn't say he lost his soul, but...
I think we'll pause there. I've really enjoyed talking to you about AIs, transhumanism, and whether we're living in a simulation.
Okay.
I mean, effectively, Shakespeare, in writing Othello, created a simulation for Othello to malfunction in and Desdemona to die in. But I think what you've said to me today about your passion for literature and the macabre, even if just as a spectator, you've persuaded me that you'd be the right stuff to take our course at Oxford. Very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.